It takes time to really know someone. That's true. Some people can be around you for months, and you still can't quite figure them out. And then there are people who feel different almost immediately. You spend 1 minute with them, maybe less, and something in you notices it before your mind can explain it. You don't know their resume. You don't know how successful they are. You've barely exchanged a few words. And still, something in you says, this person is different. This person makes people feel at ease. This person doesn't need to prove how big they are. Because somehow, they already are. A lot of us think a big person has to be charismatic. Strong presence, sharp words, the kind of person who can own a room the second they walk in. But real life teaches you something else. The people with the biggest character usually aren't the ones trying to dominate the room. They're the ones lowering the tension in it. They're not trying to raise their voice above everyone else. They make it easier for other people to use theirs. They're not performing confidence. They're not chasing admiration. And somehow, just being around them makes your nervous system relax a little. That's the kind of person this is. And honestly, you can usually feel it fast. One of the first signs is that they're not in a rush to impress you. You know that energy some people bring. When they really need you to like them right away. Their words speed up. They talk a little too much. They keep steering the conversation back to themselves. They laugh a little too hard. They try to land every sentence. And look, that doesn't make them bad. Most of us do that when we're nervous. We all want to be received well. But people with real depth feel different. They're not frantic about being understood in the first 5 minutes. They're not trying to force you to see their value on the spot. There's a steadiness there, a quiet sense of, I don't need to sell myself to be enough. And that calm is hard not to notice. In fact, it usually makes you more curious. Because now you're wondering, why does this person feel so comfortable in their own skin? Another thing you notice fast is how they listen. Not fake listening, not nodding while mentally rehearsing what they're about to say next. Actually listening. They catch what you meant, not just what you said. They notice where your voice dipped, where you hesitated, which word carried a little extra weight. And they don't always respond with some perfect piece of advice. Sometimes it's something much smaller. A pause, a simple question, a soft line like, that sounds like it really got to you. And when someone says that at the right moment, you feel it instantly. You feel that they were with you, not just waiting for their turn. That matters more than people realize. A lot of people don't listen to understand. They listen to reply, or compare, or redirect. But someone with a big heart and a grounded mind doesn't rush to make your moment about them. They let your words stay yours. And that creates trust fast. Another sign is that they don't need to one-up you. This one is bigger than it sounds. Because daily life is full of tiny competitions. You tell someone about a trip, and they've already been somewhere better. You mention a hard week, and suddenly they've had it harder. You share a win, and somehow it gets minimized before it even lands. Nobody says it out loud, but you can feel it. That subtle pressure, that need to stay on top. That habit of making other people a little smaller. Big people don't do that. When you share something joyful, they let it be joyful. When you share something painful, they don't turn it into a contest. They don't need your moment to become their stage. And honestly, that says a lot. Because it means they don't need to stand above you to feel okay inside. That's real security. That's what emotional maturity looks like in everyday life. And then there's this rare combination. They're calm, but not cold. That balance is harder to find than people think. Some people are calm, but distant. You can feel the wall. Others are warm, but so emotionally reactive that you start feeling unsettled just being near them. But every once in a while, you meet someone who has both. Their energy is steady. Their tone is gentle. They're not intense, but they're not detached either. They don't overwhelm you. They don't shut you out. And because of that, you feel strangely safe around them. Not because they're trying to be nice. Not because they're doing anything dramatic. But because you can tell they're not going to handle you carelessly. That feeling matters. There are people who make you watch every word. And then there are people who make your body unclench. The second kind usually carries the bigger soul. They also know how to respect boundaries without making it awkward. They don't ask for closeness they haven't earned yet. They don't pry too deep too fast. They don't force intimacy. They don't joke their way across lines. Just because they want to seem funny or bold. And this kind of respect is easy to overlook. Because it's quiet. It doesn't call attention to itself. But it reveals a lot. It shows that they understand something important. Closeness can't be rushed. Trust has its own timing. And mature people know how to honor that timing. They don't grab at connection. They make room for it. And weirdly enough, that's usually what makes people open up faster. Because people don't open up just because someone seems fun. They open up when someone feels safe. You can also see someone's real size when there's even a small disagreement. Anybody can seem easygoing when everything is smooth. Anybody can look warm when nothing challenges them. But the moment a different opinion enters the room, something deeper gets exposed. A smaller person gets sharp fast. Their tone changes. Their face closes. The conversation stops being about ideas and starts becoming about control. But a grounded person doesn't experience disagreement as a personal attack. They don't need to crush your point to protect their own. They can stay calm without disappearing. They can stay firm without getting loud. And that kind of strength is different. It doesn't scream. It doesn't push. It doesn't panic. A lot of what we call confidence is really just defensiveness. Dressed up in nicer clothes. Real confidence is quieter than that. Less dramatic. Less fragile. Less desperate to win every moment. I think the way we remember people is more honest than we realize. Sure, flashy people can make an impression. Funny people can light up a moment. Charming people can draw attention fast. But after a little time passes, that's usually not what stays with you. What stays is something simpler. I felt comfortable around them. I didn't feel judged. I didn't feel rushed. I didn't feel like I had to perform. I could talk without immediately feeling smaller. That's what lasts. That's the kind of presence people remember. And maybe real presence was never about making yourself impossible to ignore. Maybe it's about making other people feel safe enough to be themselves. You probably know this feeling if you've ever had a long day. The kind that leaves your mind frayed and your patience thin. Nothing huge happened. You're just tired in that deep, quiet way. And then you talk to someone. They don't give you a life-changing speech. They don't fix anything. They don't even say that much. But somehow, on the drive home, or while brushing your teeth later that night, you realize you can breathe a little easier. That happens. And when it does, it usually isn't because of the exact words they said. It's because of how they held the space. They didn't rush you. They didn't reduce you. They didn't turn your emotions into something they had to manage, correct, or compete with. And honestly, people remember that kind of care. More than they remember clever advice. People remember emotional temperature. They remember how they felt in your presence. And this part matters too. A big person is not a perfect person. They're not someone who never gets hurt. Not someone who never gets angry. Not someone who always says the right thing. A lot of the time. They're actually someone who has been through enough to become gentler. They know what it feels like to be misunderstood. To be rushed. To be dismissed. To be around people who made them feel small. So now they move differently. They react a little slower. They listen a little longer. They judge a little less quickly. Not because life was easy for them. But because it wasn't. And somewhere along the way, they learned that if you let your pain speak too quickly, it usually spills onto other people. That kind of maturity is beautiful to me. Because it doesn't feel borrowed. It feels earned. And maybe all of us have been small at some point. Maybe we've all had seasons where we needed too much approval. Where being overlooked felt unbearable. Where disagreement felt threatening. Where we talked too much, explained too much, reacted too fast. Just because something inside us was scared. Most of the time, that wasn't cruelty. It was insecurity. It was fear. That's why when I meet someone who feels truly grounded, I don't just think, wow, what a good person. I also think, this person has probably had to work for this. This calm probably didn't come for free. This softness may have taken years. This steadiness may have been built one hard moment at a time. And somehow that makes it even more moving. Because now it's not just personality. It's character. And this isn't only about learning how to spot these people. It's also about the kind of person we want to become. Most of us want someone like this in our lives. But deep down, I think we also want to be this person for someone else. The person who doesn't make others tense up. The person who lets people finish their thoughts. The person who doesn't punish honesty. The person who can hear something uncomfortable without making the whole room unsafe. The person who leaves others feeling a little more like themselves. When you think about the people you truly love being around, it's usually not because they're the most impressive. It's because they don't drain your sense of self. And if I had to sum up one of the clearest signs of a big person, it would be this. After being with them, you don't feel smaller. That matters. Some people are accomplished, talented, even brilliant. But around them, you shrink. You second-guess yourself. You monitor every word. You leave feeling subtly inferior. Big people feel different. You can admire them without feeling crushed by them. You can sense their depth without feeling intimidated by it. You can feel their strength without feeling erased. Because truly big people do not need to reduce others to feel large. They don't build presence by taking space away from everyone else. Maybe that's what so many of us are really looking for. Someone who feels trustworthy without trying too hard. Someone warm without being fake. Someone steady without being hard. Someone who changes the atmosphere just by being in it. And the reason you can feel that in a minute is because those qualities have become habits. Listening is a habit. Respect is a habit. Self-control is a habit. The way someone handles your vulnerability is a habit. People can perform for a moment, but they can't fake their deeper patterns for long. Eventually, what lives inside them starts showing through. That's why some people feel different so fast. You're not reacting to polished words. You're reacting to inner order. To someone who doesn't need to win to feel okay. To someone who has enough peace inside that they can offer some of it to other people. And I want to leave you with this. If there was ever a day when someone's exact words faded from memory, but the feeling of being understood stayed with you, then you already know this is true. A person's size does not come from volume. Real depth shows up in how they handle another human being. So the next time you meet someone, don't just notice how smart they sound or how impressive they seem. Notice what happens inside you. Do you tense up? Do you feel smaller? Or do you feel a little more settled? A little more open? A little more like yourself? A lot of the time, that's where the answer is. And maybe we can become that kind of person too. Not someone who always has the perfect advice. Just someone who doesn't rush people. Someone who doesn't let their own fear talk over someone else's truth. Someone who can hold disagreement without losing kindness. Someone who leaves people feeling less drained and more returned to themselves. To me, that's what a truly big person is. Because being big doesn't mean standing above people. It means being able to hold more. More imperfection. More difference. More silence. More honesty. More of another person's humanity without making them pay for it. And in the end, the people we remember most may not be the loudest ones. They may be the ones who made us feel the most at peace. The ones whose presence felt safe almost right away. The ones who made us feel, even for a minute, like being ourselves was enough. That's a big person, and you can usually feel it almost instantly.